Okay, so Raphael from the Gentleman's Gazette, thank you so much for doing this with me. It is a pleasure to be here in Minneapolis. It's my first time here. I'm curious about the story of you and how you ended up in the US and how you ended up here in Minneapolis. So maybe you could take me back to the 21-year-old Raphael. What was he up to back then?
Okay, yeah, well, I grew up in Germany in a small town called Untermünkheim by Schwäbisch Hall.
It's the most German town I've ever heard.
Yeah. I mean, you'll notice like the German town names are very like regional.
Okay.
You can, by the sound of it, you can kind of tell where it is. So it's southern Germany in a state called Baden-Württemberg, which is west of Bavaria, which more people know. But it's like very close to like Porsche and Mercedes, he has to say, right?
Okay.
That's where I'm from originally.
Yeah.
And then my parents were like, nurses. And I was like 18. I was like, man, what am I going to do? And I knew someone who flew at the Lufthansa.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that could be cool. And I tried to do the test, and I failed in their kind of assessment center. It was too kind of confusing. And looking back, I mean, it made sense. I would have been not a good pilot. I don't like following rules and checklists and all that stuff. So it was great. But then I was like, man, I could maybe be a tailor.
Okay. So you were already interested in clothing at this age?
I was interested in clothing.
Yeah.
I got interested as a teenager because I was, I was a paper boy.
Okay.
It was just like distributing the papers, and in Germany and maybe England too, I learned how to write with a fountain pen at school.
Yes, I did that. It's not normal in British schools these days, but the one I went to, fountain pens only.
See, it was like standard in Germany. Everyone had to have a fountain pen.
Right.
And so one day, like there's this Sprint Mont Blanc, right?
Yeah.
And it's most people don't think it's French because it's the French mountain, French sounding, but it's actually from Hamburg in Germany. And so, it's a status symbol.
Yeah.
And eBay was new. I was just interested in it, and I signed up actually for Alando, which were purchased by eBay just a few months in. It was from the Sammelpagers who started Rocket Internet. It was one of their earlier deals. And so there was no kind of checks on anything, and I could buy stuff, as a 13-year-old. And so I bought a pen. I think it was an Omas 360. It's a pen that is kind of unusual in shape. It's diagonal, and it's, I think, at the MoMA in New York. I got it, I wrote with it, and was like, this is barely better than my $5 Lamy fountain pen. So I returned it. Or not, I didn't return it, but I resold it, and I made twice as much money.
Okay.
I was like, ooh, this is nice.
Yeah.
So I quit my paperboy job. I found other brands and was like, oh, Mont Blanc, it's going well. So I started selling that, made money. That's how I got into clothing, because one day I bought a lot of pens and there were some cufflinks, and was like, well, cufflinks, what do I wear with that? French cuff shirt. Oh, what goes with a French cuff shirt? And then there was that German book, Der Gentleman von Bernhard Rötzl.
Okay.
And so I read that and was like, oh, cool. And then there were like fora, like Ask Annie About Style was the first one I found. It was like, oh, cool. And I was interested in that. And so by the time I had to decide, I was like, okay, tailoring is not going to work because you don't really make a lot of money.
No.
And I didn't have anyone to kind of support me really financially. So I was like, okay, I can't afford it. I can't make that work. And in law school, my mind was, I could wear nice suits and be in court and all that stuff. And so I went there, and then I came to the US as an exchange student.
Okay.
At the time, I'd already realized law wasn't for me. But if I had stopped law school, I would have to leave, and I would have to pay a loan, and I didn't want to be in debt, so I just stuck with it.
Okay, because it's free in Germany, right?
And normally it's free, exactly. And I went to the first private law school in Germany.
Okay.
I liked that concept, and I also felt like if I was pushed more, I would perform better.
Okay.
And they had these trimesters, and they had this trimester abroad,
okay,
which I thought was super intriguing. So I was like, even if I quit, I still want to do this. This trimester abroad. And so I was at the bottom like quarter of my class probably in terms of grades. And
just because you weren't enjoying it?
I don't know. In that school, a professor once said, he felt like all the students there were like school speakers. Everyone was kind of the best of their class, kind of, and then they all came together.
Okay.
And well, not everyone is going to be the best of their class, right? And I also realized that I have, like ADHD. And I think that's not conducive to like studying or like
law books. Yeah.
sitting in a lecture and have someone talk to you. I liked more to read, but yeah, ultimately it didn't quite jive with me. But I was like, no, well, I want to go to the US because I've never been to the US. Growing up, my parents loved to travel, but we went to like a lower cost country. So the US was not a low cost country. No. And normally as an exchange student, you go to like European countries, that's this Erasmus year.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, I want to go to the US. So I did. And first of all, you want to go to New York.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Or like LA, that kind of stuff. And I looked at the prices and was like, can't afford that.
Yeah.
Looked at Chicago, it wasn't much better. And so I was like, well, maybe I want to go to a good law school. I want to go to a large school because I went to a small one. And it needs to have an airport so I can travel and visit all my friends. And so I ended up in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
That was it. I didn't know anything about the city. And I was like, maybe, I had no idea. Right. Maybe it's rural America. I have no idea. And then I came here and I lived with a guy. He had a PhD in psychology and he was gay and his circle of friends was cool. Like he really, brought me to the baptism of their friends. And I really kind of absorbed the culture and was like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And so then I met my now wife and business partner, Teresa, at a Halloween party.
Oh, okay.
And then we did long distance for 2.5 years until like 2009 in August. And I came here, I finished my Master's of Law, LLM. And but I realized I don't want to work in law.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was good to have an American degree from an American university.
Yeah.
Just to have more name recognition for people.
Sure. So if it weren't for your wife, do you think you would be living in the US? Do you think you still would have had that desire to live here?
I don't know. I mean, I liked to know about the US, the kind of business friendliness, was something that struck me because going to law school, I realized there is a lot of, labor law is very like employee friendly over there. Here, it felt much more employer friendly. Yeah. And I felt that urge, business wise, this is what I want to do. And I think I'd be a really bad employee. Okay. But this is for me. This is great.
Yeah.
And so I like the US. But I would have gone back to Germany. Chances are that I would have probably stayed there.
Well, they make it very hard for you to stay in the US. So you have to have a real burning desire to stay in the US if you want to. Yeah.
Or like a really good, invention. You have to be very special, or you have to have money. Yeah. Which I didn't have for sure. So yes, no, I agree with you. It's not easy to stay here on H-1B visa and all that stuff.
No. But I do find that when you talk to somebody in America about if you have a business or you have some kind of dream, whatever you have, people are so much more encouraging of that in the US.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with regards to money as well, I'm sure it's the same in Germany. In the UK, talking about money and ambitions to have money, it's very vulgar.
Yeah.
Whereas in the US, it's just an accepted part of, it's a currency that everybody wants to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think, I noticed the exact same thing, right? It's like, people encourage you here, no matter whether it's a good idea or not. At the back of their head, they may think like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, but you still support in a way. And in Germany, it's the other way around. They're like, man, are you sure? That's a big risk. I mean, you went to school for law, so you have to kind of do that. And, we were once in Berlin, and we stayed there, and we had new products, and we take photos. So I found a studio close by and I rented it, and the guy's like, "Oh, are you a kind of trained photographer?"
Sure.
He wasn't interested in like what my pictures look like. It was more like, "Do you have that formal degree?" Versus here, you can be a journalist or you can be a real estate realtor.
Yeah.
But if you decide to make photos, people look at your photos like, "I like your photos. I'm going to pay for your photos." I don't give 2 cents about if you have a photography degree or not.
Yeah, I think people appreciate a maverick a bit more in the US. Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure.
So then with the Gentleman's Gazette, when did this idea start forming for, some kind of online content business around this passion that you had?
I mean, at the time, it was like blogging was a new hot thing.
Right, yeah.
It was like...
So this is like 2009 around?
2009, exactly, okay, 2010. Yeah. We got married at the end of 2009. Okay. And then you have to adjust your status and you have to get a green card, a work permit, all that stuff, which I didn't have. So it was like, okay, I can't work. It's January in Minnesota,
Yeah.
which means you're inside. It's cold outside. And clothing was my hobby. And, law school was busy. And so for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I had time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll do this. And, some people use like Blogspot at the time.
Okay.
Or that was the big thing. And I was like, no, I want to get a real domain. So I had some drive to make this something proper, not just this hobby where I don't invest any money into it.
Sure.
And I was like, I'd like more detailed information. I think this is very kind of short. There was a site called A Suitable Wardrobe, and he posted, short bits every day. I think Simon Crompton from Permanent Style was around back then, but there wasn't much else.
No.
And so I felt like, I think I could do that better, but then you have to do it better.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew nothing about internet. And then someone said, at first I had some experience with like Dreamweaver and HTML. And I tried to kind of teach myself how to do that. And then someone's like, there's this thing called WordPress. And ironically, it was the person, Herbert Stricker, from who I had met online through Style Forum, who at the time was distributing, high-end perfumes, and he was driving around. I would meet him in Hamburg, and we'd have dinner and talk about. And because he's almost 7 foot tall, he always had bespoke garments. And it was super interesting for me because I didn't have the money to have bespoke garments, and he did. And we talked about clothes. It was great. And he's now also the person who invented Roberto Ugolini, and so kind of the circle kind of closes. But he was also the one who said like, well, I think there's this WordPress thing out there. Have you looked into that? I was like, never heard of it. And I checked it out and was like, ooh, this seems good. Content management system. Made it easy for someone like me with no coding skills to be able to build it. But at the time, there were other systems out there.
Right.
And now WordPress is, I think, most websites in the world run on WordPress. Back then, that wasn't clear.
Okay.
And so I did that. And, we didn't have money to spend on advertising or anything. So I learned about SEO, search engine optimization. How do we get people on the page? How does it work? And I read a piece about like Sergey Brin and Google and how they started. And they were like, we always modeled Google after like an academic journal.
Okay.
The more you are referenced yourself, the more important you become. If the New York Times quotes you, you automatically absorb some of their authority.
Yeah.
And if, the Daily Mail and a lot of newspapers in the world cite you, and the Washington Post, then you become more important as they cite you. So it's like, okay, this is how link building works. And the other thing that I took from that interview was that he said, we want to create a search engine that truly understands the individual and provides a really good search result for their situation. So they're in a way, what they were saying, they wanted like something like ChatGPT, where you just in natural language talk to it and you get that perfect result.
Yeah.
So for me, on the flip side, it meant, okay, if we write content for humans, no matter what algorithm updates they'll have, our content will work.
Sure.
Because at the time, what would happen, people would say, I add a meta tag and I say these keywords, in 5 different ways, and maybe I say
trying to
5
hack
times.
it almost.
Exactly. They try to hack it. But then what would happen is they would update something, and now you have to go back to your old stuff, remove all that crap. And so I was like, I don't want to play this game where I just kind of try to cheat and hack and then go back and fix. Cheat and hack, try to go back and fix. I was like, no, let's create real content for real people. And I think that really helped from a vision standpoint to create stuff that wasn't just written for search engines.
Yeah. Well, that's also has a parallel to the concept of classic style of trying to do something correctly and timeless, and then you don't have to go and change it every year when things change in the external world.
Exactly.
You just remain true to it. Yeah.
Exactly. And this whole concept, right, it was like the content was like that. The way we design our products, the style I'm interested in.
Yes.
It's exactly that. It's like, I can wear this today. This is my style. I can wear it 10 years from now. And it's more sustainable. It's more resource friendly, right? So it's green by definition. And it's also just what I'm interested in. Yeah,
absolutely. How long did it take for you to really get things kicking off and profitable, at least just for you, in the early days?
It was, by the time I got my work permit, it was only like half a year.
Okay, yeah.
We had our first advertiser.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, how long does it take to make $100,000 doing this? And I came up 5 years if I did it well. But there wasn't much comparison because you had to kind of just guess in a way.
Yeah.
But at the time, the business model was more like the Huffington Post. I don't remember. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I don't think they're big these days, but back in the day, they were rather big. And it was like, you create content, you run ads, you make money.
Yeah.
Well, this first advertiser, they wanted a long contract, and then they just didn't pay. It was like, sorry, I'm not going to pay. It was like, well, that sucks, right? I did everything I said I would. I promoted you, but it's not working. Well, I don't like that.
Yeah.
What other ways are there that we can make money? And people are like, oh, I like your tie. Oh, I like your, gloves. Where did you get those? Flea market in Vienna.
Right.
We realized not very helpful. So then the idea came up, how do we actually sell a product? Cool, and what would we sell? And it was like, well, the stuff that I can't find.
Yeah.
1930s inspired, high quality stuff that is unique and different. So it was really like what I would have liked to find.
Yeah.
And just trying to offer that. Plus, Amazon was around at the time. So we're like, well, Amazon, we can't compete with them on price.
No.
Or shipping speed or anything logistics. So we're like, we have to create a product that is unique.
Yeah.
And that you can't just go and it's like, I can buy it there for like 30% less.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So that's how that came about.
Yeah.
And that was, 2012. But I also believe that, well, if I just reinvest the money into the business, then, we can grow faster. I think if I have to do it again, I'd say having that, structure of paying yourself a salary makes you operate more like a business where you're like, well, it has to make money. I need to get there. So that means I have to make this and this and this decision.
Yeah.
So I think once I started paying myself something, we probably grew faster than when we didn't.
Yeah. And something that's like a pivotal part of your story of success is your other half, Teresa.
Yeah.
And something that comes up a lot between discussion of young guys who are ambitious is there's two paths really. You either find your wife younger in life and then you go on that journey together, or you try and make something of yourself and have success and then invite the woman into your life.
Or your husband or whomever. But it's, sometimes it's, you may have someone in your life who is very capable, but you can't work with them and you have very different interests.
Yeah.
Right. And so part of it is also understanding what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and can I find someone who has a strength in an area that's my weakness, and vice versa. We didn't start a relationship with this idea to go in business together.
Sure. Yeah.
So in the beginning, it was really just me and my laptop and a corner desk that was a hand-me-down from IKEA that we bought from a local sex shop secondhand. Because IKEA was too expensive, so we just we're like going that way, right? So it's like you do what you have to do.
Yeah.
And it was from the office area, but whatever. Yeah.
And we were talking over lunch about champagne taste and beer money pockets. A lot of my guys who watch my channel, they want to dress in the Ralph Lauren suits, the Brooks Brothers suits, but they don't have the money. Or when you're a young guy, your body's changing all the time and it's not a good idea to go custom and spend all this money. So for eBay shopping, has that been a big part of building your wardrobe, especially in the earlier days?
Absolutely, because eBay was kind of how I mentioned how it all started, right? So
it depends, yeah.
I understood how I could buy things. So I would buy things on eBay that were poorly described, and then I would sell them again on eBay. I would also try to sometimes you made a contact and they had more stuff, and you buy that. So I had a good understanding of how to search on eBay. And I'm also a very good problem solver, right? And try to think in ways maybe others don't. And so I came up, with search, and we search for this and do this, you can find that. So for example, there was someone who had this kind of custom suit, and it was in this greenish color. And I saw a label, and it said Caraceni. I was like, ooh, this is Augusto Caraceni. This is a high-end suit. And then when I got the suit, it fit me quite well, and was like, well, this type of person buys more suits, not just one.
Sure.
So I asked, do you have more suits? And sure enough, she was selling it in a commission for someone else, but she still got me in touch with that person. And it happened so that he had a son in Hamburg, so we would come regularly to Hamburg, and he'd always bring some stuff, and one day he brought things in a Goyard suitcase. Are you familiar with Goyard?
No.
It's like a little more exclusive than like Louis Vuitton.
Okay.
It's a very specific pattern. Once you see it, you'll know it's like hand dotted with a canvas. And so I was like, oh, I'll take that too. And he was like, $30. I was like, great. And he was like, oh, by the way, we have a whole set at home. Do you want that too? I was like, yes, I do. And I ended up reselling it on eBay. And with that money, that was enough to buy all the plane tickets back and forth for 2.5 years.
Wow.
With Teresa. Right?
Wow.
So I knew how to do eBay and how to work it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yes, I can find some good stuff there. And then, of course, on eBay, over time, more and more people knew something, so the floor prices went up because everyone knows what it is, and what they want. It was harder to score these like deals.
Yeah, same as thrifting. More people become aware of what they have, then it's harder to score those deals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember my friend, another friend in Hamburg, he had an eBay business for clothing where he bought and sold. And he came up with good ideas where he would go to haberdashers and say, hey, haberdashers, I'll buy old stuff. So you can have a program with your current customers where they can kind of hand in their old jackets, get 20% off a new jacket. You get rid of the old stock. I sell it in an area where it doesn't hurt you. So you can keep selling your new jackets. Yeah. And so through him, I had access to stuff. And I remember once he got like an Hermes buckle, that was like platinum.
Sure.
And someone didn't know it was platinum. So he got this like, you're lucky sometimes. But so, and I think you can still do that. You just have to be okay with buying something that is, someone else may or may not have worn.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people like that. Some people not so much.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you go, commando with your pants, maybe the next person doesn't want to buy your used pants, right? That's very legitimate. I mean, you can dry clean stuff, but it's mental sometimes. Some people are like, oh, I'm not going to buy used shoes.
Yeah, I wouldn't go for used shoes personally. Yeah. Or shirts, really. Yeah. I think jackets is fine, ties and everything. I do find though the eBay thing, it saves you money, but it takes a lot of time as well. Yes. Yeah. So you have to decide which is more worthwhile right now.
Well, what do you have more of, right? As this kind of when I did my civil service, you had time or no money. Yes. And that's something you always have to consider, especially when you return, right?
Yes.
Sometimes people like to score a deal. Well, if you had just worked for 10 hours and made more money,
right? Exactly.
Or maybe started a side hustle.
Yeah.
You actually could have bought exactly what you wanted.
Yeah.
At the price you wanted.
Yeah. I think it's which one do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy shopping on eBay more, or do you enjoy working? It depends what you do for work.
I like the thrill on eBay, and I like the unusual.
Yeah.
I like that aspect of it. Yeah. And I like that you can find something truly that is not out there anymore, or sometimes in a quality that you can't find.
Yeah, and you like a lot of vintage stuff as well. Yeah.
I do. On the flip side, one thing I really learned in the US was you can't really save yourself to prosperity. I grew up in a household where my parents, they had a fixed income and they tried to make the most out of their fixed income by, spending less on things and then doing more things there. When I came to the US, I was like, well, I could just try to make more money and then get exactly what I want. Yeah. Which is a cool, empowering concept, but very few people are in a position where they can buy only the very best of everything they like, right? That champagne budget, having your car, your private jet, and you also quickly realize there's always more you could do, and
always more you can spend on. Yeah, absolutely.
And so then you prioritize what is important to me and what isn't.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Yeah. No, I said to Antonio, did you not just want to get yourself, a Porsche or an Aston Martin just for fun? He said, no, this works for me. This works for my family. But I'm already thinking, well, if I had that many subscribers, I know what vehicle I'd be driving.
But and sometimes it's good to have that aspiration of a dream, right? It could be a car. But then, I know a lot of people who did that, and they got these cars, and then they realized, it just raised the floor, so they weren't really happier but they increased their costs.
Yes.
You know, everything is more complex. That Lamborghini, you know, you have to drive carefully. Then you need the tires, the brakes, the maintenance.
Yeah.
Oh, it's broken now. You gotta wait 5 months to get your McLaren part, and you know, it's in a different. You're in a different world. And what if you would have taken that money and you know, invested it, for example?
Yeah.
Whether it's in your business, in yourself, what could you have done with it? And it's this like, oh, money to spend. And don't get me wrong, I like to buy cool things.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And but sometimes people just do it so they make it part of their lifestyle
others as well. Yes.
or their YouTube channel, right? When it becomes part of that.
Yeah.
I think there was a while of like Tai Lopez. Do you remember that?
Oh gosh, yeah, Tai Lopez. Yeah.
You know, and it was all.
I feel like he's made a bit of a comeback lately, actually. Tai Lopez. Yeah.
But I remember, you know, it's like this like you just make it part of your lifestyle. And in general, I was always a little bit skeptical of people who are like, "Oh, I teach you how to be rich." You know, here's this course and where I can teach you how to do it. Where I'm like, well, if you really knew how to do it, you'd be better off actually doing it rather than teaching me how to do it.
He is doing it by selling you the course. That's how he does it. Yeah. So step one, make an online course teaching people how to be rich. Yeah, that was a real, you know, thing a few years ago of just like vague promises, you know, how to be rich. And basically the answer in that one was how to read books. I think with Tai Lopez's course was like about reading to get rich. Yeah.
And you know, I also think there's always this kind of notion of get rich quickly, get rich easily.
Yeah.
And in my mind, there was always a fallacy, right? Like if it was easy, everyone would do it. And so I intentionally tried to gravitate towards things that were difficult because it seemed like it would keep out other people because they felt like the barriers to entry were too high.
Yeah.
You know, think about like, I don't know, a cruise ship.
Yeah.
Right? There's not many people who can just decide to go into the cruise ship market because it just requires a lot of capital.
Yeah.
So the number of people who can do this is very small. Companies who can build stadiums for, you know, football and soccer and whatnot, very few companies that can do that.
Yeah.
And to me, it was the same in like video on YouTube, right? When we started, there was, you know, hundreds of thousands of people who had a Facebook account about men's clothing.
Yeah.
But there were only, you know, maybe a handful or two handful of people doing videos about it.
Okay.
Because the video costs more money.
Yeah.
You needed more equipment. You needed all of that stuff. And it was like, yes, that's where I want to go. I don't want to compete with everyone. I'd rather do something that's more difficult. Then it's also more defensible, right?
Yeah, and it works better for the topic of clothing to see it on a video. Nate and I were talking last night about when they finally invent smell-o-vision, are fragrance YouTubers over? Or is it going to be even better for them? Because then you can smell it and get the commentary at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, with innovation, I think throughout history, people are always afraid of is, you know, is the computer going to take away my job?
Yeah.
Is AI going to take away my job? But looking back, it seems like it just shifts.
We always find new stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
The person who assembled a typewriter no longer has that job.
Yeah.
But they probably were able to find a different job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not like humans become obsolete.
No, yeah. With the Gentleman's Gazette, now you've obviously got this thing going and this is your baby for the rest of your life now. Do you think about retiring ever or stepping back a little bit? Or do you feel like this is your purpose and you wouldn't want to take a rest from it, really?
Yes, and you know, that's a question that I've asked myself, right?
Yeah.
Like, if someone would come and say, you know, I pay you this much, would you take the money? I mean, everyone has a certain number where they step back and say, wow, what are all the things I could be doing, right? And there are certainly elements of the job that are where you sit back and it's like, man, I didn't start this to, you know, deal with all the legal stuff or like, but then you're like, no, but there's these other elements that I really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if someone would come to me and say, hey, I give you $100 million, I'm like, I would do exactly this.
Yes.
I would just try to, you know, grow it faster and maybe say, hey, let's make it big like Ralph Lauren, you know. Like,
right, yeah.
But I would do the same thing. I would maybe say, hey, I'll focus completely on product development and filming videos, and I outsource everything else.
Right?
Because this is at the core of what I want to do. We're a small business, so there's more things you have to do. But I learned to like business. I like the visionary part of it.
Yeah, I see your brand is completely halfway between business and a kind of art form. It has that lifestyle element, but then you have products, and obviously the content is a business, but you have that nice balance between the two.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a world of the Gentleman's Gazette that people can really step into, which is something I try and do with my channel as well. I want it to be kind of like Ralph Lauren. Its marketing goes beyond billboards and images. It's really a parallel universe that people can exist in. Yeah.
It's like you buy this polo shirt and then you feel like, you sit in this Chesterfield sofa in this nice environment, right? And that's what they did. They kind of, you can get Ralph Lauren glasses, you can get coasters, you can get the sofa, you can get the wallpaper, you can get the paint.
Yeah.
It's not just the clothes.
Yeah.
And so I think they did that
as ties.
Exactly. And I think they did it really well. So then the question becomes, how can we be different, right? And Ralph Lauren, they're the stock market, so they have to make profits. So their retail prices are high. They have all these distributors.
Big,
exactly. So we as smaller brands can do different things. We can focus more on quality, do special runs, think about a product in a certain way. And Ralph Lauren, they didn't do much in the social media world.
No, not really. And I feel like among my generation, we do their marketing for them a little bit with, the old money trend and TikTok videos. The Ralph Lauren brand is being amplified through that, but they don't have anything to do with it really. Yeah. They've been doing the same thing, but
when you're big, it's nice as a company. You can just do, things get easier. You can hire things out. And but they always approach it from a point of view of like, we're not selling clothes, we're selling a lifestyle.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think, at Fort Belvedere, I remember when I was younger, I felt like, there's all these markups, and it's actually better for a consumer if the brand doesn't invest money in marketing, right? Now I believe it's different, because without marketing, you cannot grow. And if you cannot grow to a certain level, your products can't be as good, right? It's like, I don't know, think of an Apple Pencil, right? They just came out with their new Apple Pencil, and it costs $129. If I myself try to come up with something like this, I would never be able to achieve that.
Sure.
Apple can only do that because they market it heavily. They can create a profitable product. They can have a large R&D section and then come up with this completely new product.
Yeah.
That's why little craftsmen, right, your shoemaker, they can make a very high quality bespoke pair of shoes. But if they keep making their own shoes, every pair of shoe will be very expensive. Unless they're maybe able to create a factory and maybe get, the workmanship of a bespoke shoe or close to it at a much lower cost, because it's economies of scale and all that stuff.
Yeah, and with your brand, Fort Belvedere, where did the idea for the name and then the branding come from?
We had the Gentleman's Gazette.
Yeah.
And it was, Gazette had this like journalistic news.
It sounds like it should have been a magazine. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we were like, well, we can't call it Gentleman's Gazette.
Right. Yeah.
So what are we going to call it? And then, Teresa was like, well, how about a British country house?
Okay, yeah.
I was like, yes, I like that notion. I like that concept. But how is it tied to clothes? And then I came across, Fort Belvedere was the home of the Duke of Windsor when he was still, when he was king, and he abdicated there, and he threw like these parties in the 1930s, which that was a style I like, the golden age of menswear. Yeah. And he was the most photographed man in the world at the time. And, so I was like, okay, that's a cool, that name is good. It's available as a URL. It's trademarkable. It kind of checks all these boxes.
Yeah.
So it has this kind of, cachet to it. So that's why we chose it.
Yeah, and you started off with the ties and the pocket squares, is that right?
In the beginning, again, I was talking to Herbert Stricker, and he was like, well, if you go to a store, you don't just want to have one thing. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. Let's try to maybe have a few items that we can sell. Now, there's lots of companies now where they do the opposite. They're like, we have 20 products, we'll cut 19 and we just sell one. There's a big advantage in the sense that, the message becomes very clear. It's one thing. The risk with it is that if that one thing becomes no more popular, then you just have to move on, right? And all the brand building is kind of gone. And again, I like that more long-term vision thinking.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could have a range of things? And so for the ties, one thing that I wanted to add was, okay, we added a short tie and a long tie.
Yeah.
Because most ties at the time were just like one size, and maybe you had a long tie, but there was no short tie. So I thought like, maybe we could, add value that way.
Yeah.
Or the pocket squares, I was like, oftentimes I bought them and they were either so small that it disappeared in my pocket, right?
Yeah.
I noticed with you, sometimes we were like, oh, it's, it's kind of...
Especially a silk pocket square, it's so easy to fall off.
Exactly. And so it was like, and then I realized, silk pocket squares, oftentimes the way they're cut are based on the yield. So if you have, a 1 meter by 1 square meter, you cut 9 pocket squares out of it.
Sure, yeah.
Right? And then it's 33 centimeters, 33, and then you roll the edge and it gets more in the 30 centimeter range. So if I actually wanted a silk pocket square that would stay in my pocket, it has to be like, 42 centimeters.
Yeah.
So out of the same square meter now, I can only cut 4 pocket squares. And I have a little bit of waste.
Yeah.
But functionally, it's much better.
It's a much better product.
So, but now this product, I have to more than double the price to just break even on that, right? Yeah. Which sometimes people don't think in that way. Like, yes, this is more expensive because it's more material, and it's just thought through in a different way. And what I realized too then was, well, this works for this silk. What about that silk? What about this wool silk? What about this linen? And so to this day, our pocket squares are all sized depending on the fabric, with the idea that they don't slide down.
Yes.
Now, some pockets are smaller than others, but from the vast majority of pockets, they work well.
Yeah. There's a thing that you have to decide about when you want to create any kind of product, and I think about this with the long term of my channel is, it can't just be make as much money as possible, because there has to be some pride in the product, and I have to create something that I don't see out there that I want to exist in the world. And even if that ends up being more expensive than the competitor or more wasteful in the case of the pocket squares, then it's worth it, because again, you're creating this world of what you want to exist, and you can't just make it about the price, right?
Well, that's at least like more my philosophy. We always start quality first, all of that stuff. You can certainly take the other approach, right? Let's start with price first. It can only cost this much. We can only get there, and then you can try to engineer it in that direction. And it takes a lot of effort, to create a really quality product at a really low price. I mean, when you do that, you have the potential for like a record product, because people love the design. Yeah. And it's like IKEA, right? Or IKEA as it's in the US. They hire really good designers, and then they have their kind of machinery and everything. They can bring things sometimes at a very low price that otherwise you could not get to. Yeah. Of course, it's also more of a design to throw away sometimes, right? Like you keep it for a year or two, maybe 5, and then you just move on and get real furniture. Right. Yeah. And my interest was more, well, I want to do that real furniture, but that also means the market is going to be much smaller. Yeah. Because who can afford a $40 pair of socks, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people
who cares about a 40 pair?
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes people are like, well, I can get these, these socks from like Vitzel, and they also have the shadow stripes, and they cost me, $6 or $8, and they're the same thing. I'm like, I've bought those too. They're not the same thing. The yarn is much thicker, and if that's what you like, great. If you want feet or legs that don't overheat, thinner is nicer. And for socks in general, the thinner and finer the sock, the more expensive it is. Yeah. And people oftentimes don't equate that, right? They assume if I buy a pair of silk socks, they should last much longer because they're more expensive. Right. Actually, no, they don't last longer. They're just really fine, they have a very special look, and you have to be okay with that. It's like a luxury product.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so yeah, like sometimes like the yarns we buy cost more than the retail price of that product.
Oh, really?
There's no chance for me to offer this product for that price.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. And that's okay for me because I'm like, I don't build it for the price.
Yeah. And it sounds like a lot of your products came about by you just wanting to have it yourself and not seeing much out there on the market that was like that.
Yes. And, we didn't do like this extensive market research.
No.
And the idea also was to say, hey, we have this product and we keep it for a while. We don't just opportunistically, sell face masks during COVID.
Yeah.
We didn't do that.
You missed that one?
No, but it was a very intentional decision to say, hey, this is a fad. It's not going to be around for a while. So we'd rather direct our resources towards something that has a more long-term value.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, there's lots of people who do it differently. So everyone has to decide what they're interested in and what they want. But I'm not at all against products that are inexpensive, right? I think it's an art to create something that's of high quality and that's inexpensive.
Yeah.
Even something that's of low quality that's very inexpensive can be a challenge to produce.
Right, yeah.
It's just not something that drives me personally.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I wouldn't feel happy, selling you something that I knew would fail. Yes.
Especially when it's a brand that you've created. And you have a pride in, talking about Fort Belvedere, you come up with this idea and you see these visions of what the brand means. To sell a crappy product goes completely against that idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And maybe, people would be fine if the product was 20% less good, but 40% less expensive.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe there is a market for that. Maybe we have to create a sub-brand for that or something, but I don't know. But again, it's just, some people love that, right? They're like, I want to create something that is affordable for people.
Yeah.
That's the reason of me being here. Like there's like Primer Magazine, that was he started that with the intention, young guys finding stuff that is affordable. Right? That's his niche.
Yeah, and you see that on YouTube as well these days, yeah.
And I finally know with Amazon on the horizon, like how could we possibly compete on price?
Yeah.
And then it's a race to the bottom and you just can't do it anymore and you have to give up.
Yeah.
Because you try to compete, with Aldi. Yeah. Well, who can offer groceries for less than Aldi?
Yeah.
I don't know. Haven't seen anyone.
Not that I would want to eat. Yeah. With your personal collection, we were talking about splurging earlier. What would you say is your biggest splurge that's in either a clothing or a pen or some kind of accessory? What would you say is the...
I found that sometimes I go for quantity. So I'm like, ooh, there's this pair of shorts, and then there's this pair of shorts, and there's this pair of shorts, and I like this one too. So if you add it all up together, I could have probably just gotten one pair of shorts, custom made, rather than 4. But I'm also like, I don't think I need custom made shorts.
Right.
I think I'm fine with these, really cool seersucker patterns, and I cannot even find this pattern custom. I'd have to make the fabric at, a 300 meter minimum. That's not economical. Right?
Yeah, and sometimes if you don't have an appetite for something, it's best not to try and spark that. For example, I'm not a huge watch guy. I don't think you are either. It's like, well, okay, at least I don't have this one expensive hobby. I'll just leave that alone. No need to try and get myself into watches. Yeah.
And, I can have I have like a 1930s Reverso watch or some pocket watches or old watches. But I'm just not, I'm into leather goods, right? So I could see saying, hey, let's make some leather straps for watch lovers that want a hands-on product that is really good with, the edges folded in a treatment like that. That would get me excited.
Right, yeah.
Because I like the leather part of it. And then I'm like, well, if I have that, I also need to wear the watches to fully understand what I'm doing here. So I could see myself, going in that way into something.
Right, yeah.
Otherwise, what do I spend the most money on? I think the most expensive part was probably the closet.
Oh,
it was
really?
like...
Can I see it after we do this?
Yeah, sure.
I would love to see it. Yeah,
you can. And it's not, quite complete yet. I'm getting the hangers here from Nakata hangers. They're like Japanese hangers through like Archerton. and that's cool stuff. And then, but yeah, there's always something you could find that you want, and it's like, okay, we spent money on that, or we spent money on the house, or like spent money on food. Like good quality food.
Yeah. And just going out as well.
Going out, but even like I think lately we've cooked more. We like to entertain,
right?
So you can, like, we do like a beef Wellington dinner or something like that. Beef Wellington is not a cheap cut.
No,
like you got to get the tenderloin, get the Chateaubriand cut, and make these, and it's the time too, right? But if it's your hobby, you don't look at it as like, ooh, I could make X amount of money in this time.
Yes.
I like to go grocery shopping.
Okay.
I don't like Instacart,
right,
because the people don't know the ripeness I want in the avocados. And I also like to seeing the new things, seeing the fresh produce, touching it. Instacart, you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, I enjoy this. I want to go to the farmer's market.
Right.
So it's not a waste of time. It's like pursuing my hobby and my passion.
Yeah, because that's one of those tasks that many entrepreneurs would go, gosh, I'm never doing that. That's something I outsource immediately. But if you enjoy it, then it's a shame to kill your pleasures, isn't it? Yeah,
exactly. I don't enjoy, like laundry or cleaning up. Then then you outsource that.
Exactly.
Right? I don't like accounting, so I outsource that.
Yeah. And with Minneapolis, do you go out a lot in the city? Do you have some favorite kind of restaurants or bars that you like to go to? Obviously, I'm not going to get you to name them so people don't, come and find you, but do you find yourself going out in the city a lot still, or less so these days?
I think Minneapolis is, for its size, extremely good in terms of there's lots of theater seats per capita. I think second highest after New York.
Oh, really?
There's, you can go to the opera. There's a good orchestra. There's food bars, really good bars. They had people here, they started with shrubs and fermented cocktails. They got written up in the New York Times.
Yeah.
There's really good bars, really good restaurant scenes, and we try to go. I think, unlike in New York, when there's a new hip restaurant, it's hard to get into.
Yeah.
You sometimes you need to know someone, or it's booked out, and you have to kind of be right there. At 8 a.m. at a day the reservation opens to get in, and there's always continuously new restaurants. So I love going to places and try the things, have a good cocktail that is well made,
What's
well
your
balanced.
go-to cocktail?
Oh, it's hard. I like egg white cocktails.
Okay.
So I do it myself as well. I like interesting things, like blended things, not just one whiskey, or sometimes add maybe a drop of Lafroig to get a smokiness out of it, or I did one that I really liked. It was a Waldmeister syrup with like a Cointreau and a gin and an egg white. It has this like vibrant green color, and then you drink it and you're like, I'm not quite sure what's in it, but it's really nice. It works really well.
Yeah.
So I like novelty. I like to experiment.
Okay, yeah. I like to do that sometimes. There's a bar I go to that it has the largest collection of American whiskey in the world, which obviously you can't really sit there and look at the menu. For how long can you look through that and choose one? It's almost impossible. So I just say to them, I like a bourbon, smoky, a little sweet, under X amount, and then see whatever they come up with. Yeah, I'm happy to put myself in other people's hands when it comes to experiencing new food and new drinks.
Especially expert hands. And here we had a lady, she was like, she won the bartender of the year, I think even internationally, at Spoon and Stable. And you can go there and, you can even throw obscure things at them and they'll make it and they'll do it right.
Yeah.
Or it's, the Clover Club, like, not many people know that. And they're like, I got the raspberry syrup and I'll make one for you. That's great.
Yeah.
So, I like to go out, but I also like to cook and entertain in the home. It has a different feel,
Yeah, you have a beautiful home here as well.
When you can sit and you have a drink and maybe like a port wine, or it's just very different.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And then you can tell a story of, you brought this bottle of wine and you were at the vineyard, and it's different if you just go to the restaurant and they're like, this is what we got here.
And for your entertaining at home, what would be a go-to outfit for you for an entertaining at home outfit?
You know, when I cook a lot, I run hot.
Yeah.
So it depends on the time of the year. But I sometimes, you know, I just wear like a dress shirt and a pair of slacks and some Allbirds slippers.
Yeah.
At home, you know, with some socks.
Yeah.
And if I'm not, and then maybe a jacket.
Okay.
Right? I don't wear
Once
like
you've done cooking, yeah.
Yeah, I don't wear full suits, and sometimes I don't even put the jacket back on because I'm just like sweating.
Right.
And I don't like that.
Yeah. I actually want to talk to you about Albert slippers once we finish this, because I'm trying to find the perfect pair for wearing around the house. But let's wrap this up. Thank you so much for doing this with me. It's been a pleasure getting to know the real story behind the channel and you and everything. Yeah. Let's go and have some wine on the porch, I think is the plan.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Gent Z podcast. And thank you to Raphael for making the time to chat. He and his wife, Teresa, were incredibly generous hosts, and it was a pleasure meeting both of them. Next week's guest on the Gent Z podcast is Ash Jones of The Chap's Guide. So be sure to look out for that episode on your podcast platform of choice, and remember to always be a gentleman.